everywhere is getting destroyed. It just has this like scary vibe to it, creepy and weird too. I want to try to understand what this book is about. There's one book of the Bible that I read for the first time kind of a while ago, and when I read through the whole thing, it was the weirdest, most confusing, creepiest book I've ever read. There are a lot of reasons for that, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I really want to read it again and try my hardest to understand it and try to make sense of it. I'm realizing I never actually said what this book was, like the title of the book, so I'm gonna get to that in a little bit. So this isn't the type of book that like starts off kind of calm and then it like slowly gets more and more intense. It starts off so intense. In fact, the first chapter is like possibly the craziest part. So it starts off right away of this guy having this like weird vision hallucination thing, and he starts seeing these things. He calls them living beings. He says they're like people and they look like people, except they all have 4 faces. They had 4 wings on each side, and underneath the wings they each had hands, but like any direction they go in is like forward, but they don't turn. And there's like a bunch of heads, so it was like a human head in the front. One side it was a lion head, and the other an ox, and then an eagle in the back. And then later it starts talking about this weird wheel thing. It says each wheel that was like next to them or below them would like move with them as they moved, and each wheel was covered with eyes. I feel like that is a perfect description of why I'm reading this book right now and why I'm trying to understand it, because the entire book is like that. It's so bizarre, but it's also like so interesting at the same time. So basically, I know that Israel is about to get taken over and everyone's getting captured and everyone's going to become prisoners in Babylon, and Israel is going to be no more for a while, and then a little bit later on they're gonna come back and they're gonna rebuild and start over, and it's gonna be great. Like, his main purpose is to tell people that this is going to happen. Okay, so before it goes even further, I wanted to stop and explain what this book is. It is Ezekiel. Ezekiel is one of the prophets. He was given many different instructions on how he needed to warn the people of Israel about the bad things that were to come. In the beginning, when I first started reading this book, I thought it was just going to be a fun time trying to understand the crazy hallucinations of Ezekiel, but it actually ended up being this whole kind of big struggle of me really trying to understand what this book meant. I do eventually understand everything, and so that moment's very satisfying, but there is a lot of struggle leading up to that. Okay, so the unique part about Ezekiel is that he, instead of just telling people of things that are going to happen and warning them, instead he has to be like a physical example of the things that are going to happen to the people. So one of the craziest ones I just came across is where Ezekiel is told to go outside, draw out a little map of the city, and lay down on his side next to it for over a year. He has to lay there without moving. His hands are tied up, his feet are tied up, and he just has to lay on his side staring at this drawing of the city. It says that he's supposed to do it as an example of like the weight of all of Israel's sins that he's supposed to like kind of bear. I'm starting to see little like pieces of Jesus, or like things that are supposed to kind of like point to Jesus, but like that is obviously insane just imagining that. It's also crazy how Ezekiel just does it. He doesn't even question anything. He's like, okay, I'll just go do that. God telling Ezekiel over and over and over again that he's gonna destroy everyone in Israel and that they deserve it and that they're paying for all their sins, and just over and over and over again telling them that they're doing horrible things and they're gonna get severely punished for them. And he keeps saying at the ending of all these passages that like, I'm doing this so that you will know who I am. And for the past few chapters I've been like, can't you make people understand or believe in who you are in a way that's not just like destroying everyone? If the whole purpose is just to show or like prove who you are to these people, can't you do it in a slightly easier way? All like the whole book is like in anticipation for something bad that's going to happen. Everywhere is getting destroyed. Every nation is getting taken over and captured, but eventually, after all of the destruction and bad stuff that they've been talking about this whole time, there will be peace. So it just has this like scary vibe to it. Their hearts will be softened and that things will be peaceful again, and they'll come back to Israel and they'll like rebuild, and just so intense and like kind of scary, kind of intimidating. I feel like the thing that I just like struggle to understand the most is you just think that there are much better, much easier, much kinder ways to get people to understand and believe in who you are, you know? I'm just trying to wrap my head around the reasoning for it and why it has to be the way that it is, if that makes sense. And yeah, maybe they deserve it. They have done some messed up things, but I don't know, it just seems a little bit more intense than necessary. So I think it's time that I actually try to do some research on this book. I can tell that there is much more meaning behind the words than what is on the surface. So hopefully I have a better reasoning and I understand it a little bit better before I finish it. Because I know that there is a reason and I know that it must make sense somehow. So I've been looking things up. I've been trying my hardest. I'm seeing a lot of the same thing, which is basically explaining how people just saying that this is just how it was in the Old Testament. It had to be punished with an equally harsh punishment as the like sinful deed or whatever. I feel like there's more of a reason than just that, but I don't know. Okay, so now I'm getting into a place where Ezekiel is like having more visions, and it's just of this man, this random guy, and he's showing him the details of this temple. Like, it's so specific, like every little detail, the amount of feet long something is, the amount of boards put into a wall, like literally every single detail is put into this. But I think part of the reason for the specifics is to show and to prove that like there is a plan in place and it's very specific, it's very detailed, and every inch of it is like mapped out perfectly to all work out in like the best way possible. Like you can see that like physically with the thing that they're building, but also you can kind of assume that that also applies to the people and their lives and what's gonna happen to them. I feel like I'm really starting to understand the purpose of this book and the reason behind it. The good news is that I am on chapter 47 and there's only 48 chapters. Obviously, I don't know every detail about everything yet, but I think I do have an answer to my question, which is that even though there's a lot of talk about the negative things the people are gonna have to suffer through in this book, it's very clear that the negative things that have to happen first are so necessary in order to achieve a goodness that's better than what they had before. There's nothing that they can do, no like bad, horrible, sinful, like awful thing. It doesn't matter what they've done. It's not going to stop this really good and perfect plan from being accomplished, which is an actual really exciting, hopeful, good book, but it just starts off a little rough.